Justin Trudeau is like King Saul. That's a good example. The longer Justin Trudeau serves in power, the more radically insane he becomes. I have no doubt that if he continues on his present path, he's going to turn into Nebuchadnezzar. Here's what he said in the House of Commons today. He went absolutely wild. Polyev here has just asked him about the $1 billion slush fund whistleblower. What do you think Trudeau responds?
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader's plan that seeks to close Parliament last week failed. All it served to do was show the true colours of the Conservatives. It cost $2 million to Canadian taxpayers.
Yeah, Trudeau talking about cost to Canadian taxpayers is laughable. That's rich. He's concerned about fiscal responsibility now? Really?
The Conservative Party tried to reduce access to affordable childcare services, reduce the construction of affordable housing, and cut in the budgets of policing and military bodies. They want to bring us back to the Stone Age.
Right. So discussions about affordable house care or affordable childcare and affordable housing, all of those, again, are ridiculous, considering who it's coming from. The policies that Trudeau puts forward are not going to ensure affordable childcare. Look at the shortages we have right now with childcare. And the housing market explains itself. That is, if Trudeau thinks that what he's doing right now ensures affordable housing, then he has gone completely insane. Now, of course, Trudeau doesn't think that. He knows that his policies are increasing the cost of housing in the country. He just doesn't care. That's his objective. That's his plan. And as for returning to the Stone Age, by his net zero ideals, through his net zero ambitions, Trudeau will be returning us to the Stone Age without electricity and without power.
We, on our side, will meet the needs of Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was about the Prime Minister's billion-dollar green slush fund scandal. We already know while he forces 2 million Canadians to a food bank and doubled housing costs is quadrupling the carbon tax, he has a billion-dollar fund that whose own bureaucrats say reminds them of the sponsorship scandal, whose executives give money to their own companies. Yesterday, a courageous whistleblower testified the Prime Minister's innovation minister lied, and I quote, lied to the committee. Why is this minister and his boss, the Prime Minister, covering up this scandal and waste of Canadian tax dollars?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It's not surprising that the Conservative leader doesn't want to talk about his failed Republican-style plan to shut down Parliament last week. All his 30-hour temper tantrum achieved was to show Canadians the party's true colors and cost Canadians $2 million in tax wasteful spending. The Conservative Party tried to cut affordable childcare, cut construction of affordable housing, and defund the police and Canada's armed forces. While they want to bring us back to the Stone Age, we'll stay focused on Canadians.
The Liberals are applauding Trudeau, but they really have no reason to do so. The man is in such sludge, such moral sludge, political shadow. He can't even formulate an answer for himself. He has to write out an answer, or someone writes down an answer for him, and then he has to stick to a script, pretending that he's done something grand and marvelous, when in reality all he's done is read words from a page.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Canadians are forced to eat stone soup this winter after this Prime Minister gave us the worst food price inflation in 40 years, and we have 2 million Canadians, a record-smashing number, lined up at food banks. I know the Prime Minister is desperate to avoid offending his own track record, or worse yet, his quadrupling of the carbon tax. There is a common-sense Conservative bill, C-234, in the Senate, up for the vote today. Will the Prime Minister stop blocking the bill, axe the tax so that our farmers can feed families?
Right, so inflation is still out of control. Food prices are out of control. Housing costs are out of control, and yet we're not in a recession. We're not in a recession, we're told. No, this isn't a recession. No, we're not in a recession. We're close to a recession, but it's not a recession. Really? That's what experts are saying, even as, for example, Hasbro just laid off, what, 1,000 or 1,100 workers because people aren't buying toys this year because they can't afford toys, because instead they have to pay taxes and have to pay ridiculous fees to the government so they can achieve their contemptible Orwellian antichrist ideals and goals. It's nonsense.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party of Canada had the opportunity to support affordability measures for Canadians, but instead they chose to take 30 hours attacking the most vulnerable. During the Conservative leaders...
The most vulnerable, of course, being the Liberal government. Look at the numbers in the polls right now. The Liberals are vulnerable. They're exposed. People realize what sort of hypocrites they are.
$2 million temper tantrum, they gladly stood against veterans experiencing homelessness, against emergency shelters for women and girls, against Indigenous housing, against rapid affordable housing construction. They even tried to prevent support for those who lost their homes in Hurricane Fiona. That leader is reckless and should be ashamed.
You can see Trudeau's spirit begin to stir. He's like Pharaoh. It's like Pharaoh as he increases in his madness. There are shades of it now releasing that only increase and continue as the debate rages.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The truth is that the Prime Minister is not spending money on any of those things. He has a food program that doesn't feed kids, it feeds bureaucracies and creates frameworks that kids can't eat. He has a housing affordability program that doubles the cost of housing, a housing accelerator that hasn't built a single house, a carbon tax that hasn't reduced emissions. So instead of spending billions on programs that cause inflation and do nothing but sound pretty, why won't he axe the tax on our farmers so that they can feed Canadians this winter?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Whether the leader of the opposition makes a homemade video about it or not, a key factor contributing to food inflation around the world is Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. That party has been playing right into the Kremlin's hands by voting against Operation Unifier, by voting against funding for military aid to Ukraine, and by voting at every opportunity, including again this morning, against the Canada-EU free trade agreement that Ukrainians have been asking for. We will never abandon Ukraine, unlike the Conservative leader who shoved Canadians.
If Mr. Trudeau showed any more passion for Ukraine, he might actually spontaneously erupt and shoot into the stratosphere. He has all of this zeal for Ukrainians. He refuses to show that same zeal for Canadians. It's good that the Conservatives voted against sending more money, more aid to Ukraine, funneling money into Zelensky's pocket. More than that, we're so sick and tired of Trudeau and other bureaucrats around the world blaming Putin for inflation. That is, the problem with our bureaucracy, with our government, is that they conflate high prices with high inflation. That is, the two aren't the same. High prices are a consequence of high inflation, true. But high prices occur for a variety of reasons. There are numerous factors that affect the cost of goods. Trudeau then and other government bureaucrats and MPs say that high prices mean high inflation and high inflation means high prices because it lets them off the hook for their monetary disaster, for their printing an excess number of dollars that increase the price of goods in the country. It's a subversion tactic by Trudeau to make himself seem innocent, even though his hands are plunged in a putrid filth of monetary fiasco.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is desperate to distract from the misery that he caused here at home. I wonder if he could just for once think about Canadians instead of thinking about himself. We have 2 million Canadians lined up in food banks, a record-smashing number. He's doubled the cost of housing. He wants to quadruple the carbon tax. 9 in 10 young people say they'll never be able to afford a home. We understand with this miserable record, he doesn't want to talk about Canada or Canadians. He'd rather spread falsehood about faraway foreign lands, Mr. Speaker. Will he not stand up for once for Canada, ask the tax to our families?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Conservative leaders' partisan vitriol and performance games are hurting Canadians. Let's talk about their record directly. When it came to 988, the suicide crisis...
Did that suicide crisis helpline direct the victim to MAID? Trudeau wants to talk about helping those who are mentally in distress, even though he pushes euthanasia? Really? What a hypocrite.
How did they just vote against? When it came to the Lac-Mégantic rail bypass, how did they vote against? Against. When it came to the new Montreal Holocaust Museum on the first night of Hanukkah, how did they vote? Against. Mr. Speaker, there is clearly nothing this Conservative leader won't compromise.
So now we can see the full breadth, or beginning to see the full breadth of Trudeau's insanity. I have no doubt King Saul looked exactly like that when he was on the verge of trying to destroy David. I have no doubt Nebuchadnezzar looked like that. I have no doubt King Ahab looked like that. You can see the physical manifestation of the sin in Trudeau's heart. It exposes itself through his actions, through his countenance, and through the way he speaks.
Order.
That's the end of it between Poilievre and Trudeau. Our government is insane. The Liberal government is insane. And their polling numbers reflect that. Canadians realize it. They claim all of these grand and exquisite promises. They proclaim them, and yet the truth is manifest. Look at the situation we're living in right now. Look at the cost of housing. Look at the cost of food. Look at the cost of something as simple as toys for Christmas. No one is able to afford to live. And yet, instead of recognizing the truth for what it is, the Liberals continue to deceive and lie. But like the conquerors of old, like the kings in the Bible who refused to accept the truth, it will be their downfall.